Hey Hebrew fans, this is Todd. I was going to shoot this video live at first, but I realized if I shot it live, you guys would actually be watching paint dry. So I decided instead just to go ahead and record it, and then I'll edit it. So today we are going to touch up this figure. And you can see the damage on the arm right there. And so we got to fix that paint job because the paint has scraped off in this area. And we need to actually reapply that paint. Now this figure people call the Blastic area because they used a black plastic. And they coated the figure, or they made the figure out of black plastic and then painted the whole figure. Now because of this, it makes it very hard to match this paint because the whole figure is coated in paint. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get this ready. So first thing we have to do is take this figure apart because you don't want to accidentally damage any of the parts. Now what causes this problem is this chain right here. This chain will rub on the arm many times as it comes across, and it will cause the black plastic, or the paint to come off. And that's one of the biggest problems. Especially put it in a box or something else or lay it down, you can see the little scratches caused by the chain. I'll show you guys at the end of the video what I did with my figure to not have that problem with the chain. And you guys can decide to do what you want with yours, but I would suggest getting rid of the chain and using some other medium in order to go across that arm right there. There's also some spots right here on the forearm that looks like the paint came off on this guy's figure. And it looks like that's about it for damage. I know a lot of these have had problems with the legs right here. I can't tell if it's paint off there or dirt. I'm just going to leave that alone though. I'm not going to mess with that. So let's go ahead and match this color. So first things first, let's get it apart. I got my trusty heat gun here. And like always, I want to put it on a low temperature and just heat up the parts so I can pull them off. Now with this particular figure, you need to be very careful because it is all painted. It's very easy to ruin this figure by heating it up too much. Be very careful to keep things cool. And to get this head off, you don't need it very hot at all. Just enough to pop it off. And I have a box over here. I'm going to keep all the parts in so I don't lose my friend's parts. So now let's take the armor off because you don't need the armor on there. And even though you don't have to heat the armor to take it off, I just like doing that just to warm it up just a little bit so that there's no damage caused when you pull it off. So just a real light warming. In the summertime, when it's nice and hot out, I don't have to worry about doing this. Usually it's warm enough. But being it's starting to get a little colder this time of year, I like just to kind of warm up things before I pull them apart. Just so there's no snappage or any other issues. So let's go and pull off this armor. I'll just leave the dragon affixed on there. Now when I mail this back to my friend, I'm not going to put the armor back on. I don't want the chain to rub during the mailing and cause the paint to get ruined. Alright, so now we have that part exposed. Now what I also want to do is I actually want to pull off this bicep right here so I can get full access. And again, there's a little spot right there. It's also has some of the black paint showing. So to get the bicep off, same thing, just warm it up. And it works best. You want to be careful not raising this arm too high. There's actually a lot of spots scratched on this arm. And again, it's caused from that chain rubbing in this area. It's just a really bad design to put a metal chain on a figure that's painted only. So again, we're going to heat that bicep up, not get it too hot. All sides, all angles. Now a lot of times I use the boil and pop method, and that works great for most figures. But again, because of the black plastic and the paint issues on this, I really don't want to use boiling water on this figure. I want it to have as little possible problems as possible as we try to fix this figure. So let's see if that is warm enough yet. Now sometimes you have to wait for the heat to propagate throughout the figure. So let's just take a look here and see if we can get that off. And there it is. And now you can see the black plastic before it's painted, how it looks. And inside the hole you can see the same thing too, where the plastic isn't painted. Alright, so let's go ahead and set this arm aside because I still have to do some painting on this arm as well. And there we go. Now we have our part we're going to fix right here. So now let's go ahead and mix up some paint. So as I take a look, I have some different blues I'm going to pull out and see which ones seem to be closest before I start doing my mix. And I have some various paints in here. I apologize for the top view of the camera, but I figure it's the best way for you guys to see me painting it without actually having issues of my hands being in the way. Alright, so now I got a whole bunch of blues out. Now I can start to try to match this paint. So, it's interesting is a lot of times when I match Skeletor's paint, it's kind of more purplish than blue. But take a look at this one here, you can see how next to the blue, you can tell it does have a slight purple tint to it. So I did pull out the purple too to add that little purple tint to it. The darker navy blue does have some purple in it, but you know what, that's just way too dark. Let's take a look at the turquoise. Well, that's going to be really hard to match eventually. Let's look at the bright blue, and again, that's just really dark. And let's take a look at this light blue again. I know it's way too light, but we're going to go ahead and maybe start with that color and see what I come up with. So, let's go ahead and open this brand new light blue up. Alright, I got my light blue opened up. Now, sometimes when I mix colors, I might start with one color, try to get it mixed, and I might actually scrap that color and start from scratch again. This is known as parrot blue. Let's take a look and see if we can't match this. So, when you match paint, you want to get a really good light, and this light right here actually is one that is a sunlight, so it actually simulates sunlight. That gives us a nice true color. The nice part about it is also the magnifying glass on there, so when I can paint, I can just see really close what I'm doing, and that's really handy to do. But I'm going to go ahead and just use the light part of it and not use the magnifying glass. And again, you want to use some light that's true light, so using a sunlight works really good. Now, I have this really nice brush I'm going to paint with. I don't want to use this for mixing because I don't want to have the colors mixed too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and grab an older brush just for the mixing part of this. So let's start with our light blue. Always shake your paints before you start. And you can see that is a long ways away from being that color. So we got a lot of work to do to get it to match this. But it's probably the closest that we have to start with. So you can kind of see there the difference. You can see it has some purplish in there compared to the blue. So you know what? I'm just going to add the purple right off the bat. What the heck? Just to get the purple out of the way. Mix that right into our blue. Now, when you paint, the color you have on the cup is actually going to be a different color than what it is on the figure. And the reason for this is the paint will dry darker. So you want to make sure whenever you mix, it's just a couple shades lighter than what you want it to be when it's done. So let's go ahead and see how this looks on the figure, just so I can see how far I am. And actually, you know what? That is not really too bad at all. Let me go ahead and hit that with my heat gun and see how that looks. So we can get a true color comparison. Now let's look at it under the true light. You can see it's just a little bit too light, but not much. The tint's actually pretty close to the color we want. So let's rub that off before it becomes permanent on that figure. And let's just add a little bit darker color. Now, a couple ways we can do this. We can use the bright blue to make it a little darker. That would work good. Or I can just go really dark with the navy blue. I'm afraid to jump right to navy blue, so I'm just going to use a little bit of this bright blue. Now, these colors, my wife actually named them. Some of these. This one's actually called bright blue, but it just sometimes, you know, she will rename them with different names than what they actually are. So sometimes it's kind of funny. So my wife's the one that writes all the little names on the bottles for me, make it easy for me. So let's go ahead and just add a drop of blue. And we just want just a smidge because it's so close right now, we don't want to alter it too much. And that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and put a little dab on his shoulder again. And again, when you do this, you're just putting a small little dab on there you can wipe off later. And you can see how it's lighter than figure is right now. So we'll take our heat gun and let's go ahead and heat that up. And again, this is one of the hardest colors to match just because of the way they did the paint scheme. And you know what? That looks a whole lot better. You can see it's still a little bit lighter, but I think once I add my clear coat, it's going to darken up a little bit. That's what I'm hoping for. So let's go ahead and blend that into the black side. So now we're going to get our nice new brush. Being this is black underneath as well, it is going to look darker. Now trying to coat black with this kind of paint is pretty difficult to do. So you want to do it as a dry brush. So you just want to take the brush, put it in there lightly, and then do some kind of swaps back and forth. And then just lightly brush it on. And you see how it looks. Alright. So my first coat, that's not too bad. You can see how it's kind of blending right in there. Let's just go ahead and let that dry a little bit. Alright, let's go ahead and add another dab of color on there. Now, because it's going to be impossible to match the paint exactly, we're actually going to make the area a little bit larger than what the damage is once we're done at this, just to kind of blend it in. And you can see that's kind of working pretty good. Might as well touch up this back shoulder right here too while I'm at it. There we go. Let's go ahead and see how that looks close up on the camera. That does not look half bad. And I'm hoping once I add the clear coat to it, it will change the darkness just a little bit. Again, you want to use very light paint on this. You don't want it to be thick at all. The idea is you don't want to get any brush strokes visible when you're done at this. Brush strokes are bad. To get rid of brush strokes, you just keep brushing over the top of what you worked on and just kind of feather it in. And this will give it a nice clean look when we're all done. And hopefully it will not even be detectable when we're done. That's the goal. Alright, let's see how that looks now. That's not bad at all. That looks pretty good. So while we have this paint mixed up and the right color, let's go ahead and touch up some other spots. So we have the elbow on here. And we have the bicep right in there. We got some scratches too. So now interesting is sometimes the paint color is actually different on different parts of the figure. I don't know why they do that with Mattel sometimes. So sometimes you may have it match just perfectly one part, but then you go to put it somewhere else and it just doesn't match the same. We'll see how this works out. And again, with just really light brush strokes. You don't want to put a big thick coat of paint on there. It's just to fill in the spots. And again, you want to feather that paint in so that it's not really noticeable. You just put a blob, it'll be very noticeable, so be very careful just to feather that right in. That does not look half bad. Alright. Okay. So, now that's done, we don't want to lose this color, because we may need it again. So let's put another cup on top, seal it in so it doesn't dry. I'm going to go clean my paintbrush, I'll be right back. And then we'll mask it off and prepare it for our clear paint. Alright, my paintbrushes are all clean. Now it's time to prepare this figure for its clear coat paint. So we're going to go ahead and mask this figure a little bit. You don't want to get clear coat on everything else. You want it just on the parts we painted. Sometimes if you get clear coat on the other parts, it will come out actually sticky. So you want to protect the rest of the figure. So you don't want to have sticky residue on the figure. Raise that up a little bit. Tuck in the tape in the seam the best you can. And then just wrap it right around. So you can see how I have the tape tucked in the seam right there to protect the rest of the figure. We want to just paint that shoulder. And again, just kind of lay the tape underneath there and slide it right into the shoulder. And this side's gonna be a little tricky. I'm going to take a couple passes with this one with some more paint, or some more tape, I mean. So there we go. It's funny, it kind of reminds me of Trap John. We have this whole entire side coated like that. And there we go. Now I could sit here and tape the whole entire figure. I don't want to do that. That'd be a waste of tape. So what I do is I get a Ziploc baggie, something like this, and I'll cut the corner off, and then I'll slide the arm through that corner to protect the rest of the figure. This is a great way to protect the figures, to make sure that you don't get paint everywhere. So first you coat the best you can with tape, and then you just slide the figure and find that hole and just slide it right over that shoulder. Make the hole a little smaller, and the bag will just stretch over the top of it. Now it will have a tendency to pull back out, so you have to be a little careful with this. And sometimes I'll actually tape the bag up there once I get it in place. You know, all that extra space. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take saran wrap and wrap it around the figure when I paint it. That works really good too, when we have the blue to protect it. So I may end up doing that when I head downstairs when I paint this, is just take and wrap the saran wrap around it. Now the other arm, we don't want to paint it completely either, so we're going to just wrap this thing up just in tape. We want to make sure there is some parts that are still beyond the paint part we painted. So I have that fin stick out. One thing you want to be very careful to do is try to avoid painting the hand. If you can avoid painting the hand, that's always a good thing. Put that paint at. It matches just a little bit too close. It's hard to tell where it's at. Alright, there we go. I think that will be pretty good. Any connection parts you want to make sure are also protected. Sometimes I'll put earplugs in there, or foam or something else to protect the hole from being painted. This tape will do fine though. Alright, that's ready to paint too. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and clear coat that, and I'll be back. Alright, so I went ahead and clear coated it, and you always want to wait 15 minutes between each coat. This is the spray paint I use the matte version. I like Krylon a lot. Make sure it's matte, don't get the shiny stuff. And I like this one because it's also UV resistant. So if you do glow in the dark parts, do not use this, because you'll end up making it so it stops glowing in the dark, or it won't glow very well. So watch out for the UV resistant if you're doing glow in the dark. But other than that, it works well. So let's take a look. It's been coated, and it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and pull them out of the bag. Now, because I don't want to damage it and pull them back through the hole, I'll actually just rip this hole larger and just pull them out on this side. That way I don't mess up my nice new painted surface. Let's pull off all the masking. Again, being careful not to damage that nice freshly painted area. You actually want to wait 24 hours before it fully sets up, so be very careful around those areas you just painted. And I don't think that looks half bad. Alright, so let's take a look at the arm. Alright, so now to reassemble it, all you have to do is heat it up. Remember, low temperature when you use the heat gun. You don't want to cause any damage. And then just pop that arm right back on there. There we go. Beautiful. Now he is ready to ship back to my friend. Now I'm going to wait actually till tomorrow before I ship him. Just I want to make sure the paint is completely set up. Again, I'm not going to put the armor or head back on as I don't want that chain to rub during the shipping and cause the paint to chip off again. Now let me show you a solution that I use for mine. So that chain would not rub. So I do suggest that you do something different because you don't want that paint to rub. Look at the natural light, that looks really good. Anyway, let me go ahead and grab my figure. I'll be right back. So here's my Dragon Blast Skeletor, and what I used was some elastic, it was black elastic, and I just kind of twisted it together and tied it in knots so it kind of has like a chain look, but that way then it won't rub on the shoulder. And I also put it below the arm instead of on top of the arm. That way it kind of protects it as well from having any issues. So the dragon kind of stretch away if he needs to get a little away from Skeletor. And kind of a cool way to do it. And of course I just wrapped it around the lock a bunch of times before I tied all the knots. So there you have it. That's how I fixed mine so I would not have issues with the chain rubbing. Oop. And just pop them back on there. I kind of really wish they would have made his mouth open. His mouth open would have been a really cool idea for this one, so you can actually put a flame in there. I have done mouth open versions before, but I do suggest that Mattel, if you're listening, or actually Super 7 now, that you make a new head that is open mouth so we can put a flame in there. Maybe even give us a flame to put in there. That would really rock. Anyway, so there's mine. No chain, no rubbing, don't throw out the black, causing issues. Okay, well, that's all I have. If you have any questions, leave comments down below. The hardest part is mixing the paint correctly. Once the paint's mixed correctly, it all goes pretty smooth. And sometimes the paint, especially with Skeletor, will have too much color. If you have too much color in it, you just add some gray to it to take the color away. Very light on the gray, it will take the color out pretty quick, so be careful. So if you end up needing, especially the Skeletors that aren't pre-painted like this, the ones that are actually just plastic coated color, a lot of times you got to add some gray to their skin tone. Alright, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, leave your comments, share with your friends, and hopefully you can fix the black bare spots on your figures as well. Alright, you guys, thanks again. Bye.